Greetings Internet, welcome to Aaron Plays. In this episode we'll continue our look at Anzio, The Struggle for Italy, 1943 to 1945 by Avalon Hill. My version 4 or edition 4, coming out in 1978. So why am I doing this? Well, I had that hiatus which I mentioned in the prior video from doing the channel, and I thought I want to come back, I want to do a video, but I was like, what do I do one of? And then as I'd had this game, never played it, and it's the 80th anniversary of the invasion, I thought, let's do it. So in this episode we're going to have a look at the terrain, or the map board, the pieces, going into a bit of detail, and the axis setup, where we're actually going to place the units and why, and the victory conditions, etc. I'm not going to go into a deep dive in the actual rules. I'll explain rules as I play and go along, but yeah, I at least need to show you how the thing actually works and take it from there. Now, one of the previous comments, or comments from the previous episode, someone asked why there's no so few counters on the actual charts. Well, let's have a quick look at one of these charts in a little bit more detail. Okay, so the game comes with this is like the German organisational chart. So you fill this completely in, and all the counters go onto this initially. Now, this is just the basic organisation. From this you could then put them into baggies and organise it from there. But once I've done all that for the Germans, as I'm deciding to do the basic game scenario, I move the counters from this chart to this chart. So that's what all those gaps are there. Now do remember that in this game it's got a step reduction system, and the counters do not have a reverse side. There's nothing that it's blank on one side. I don't believe they had the technology back then, or if they had, it was in its infancy to have double-sided counters. So each actual division is represented by a multiple of counters as it degrades. So we start with the unit at full strength, and then it takes a step loss, and then you replace it completely with a different counter. So when we look at a simple German infantry division from here, it's got, well, effectively it's got 3 steps. You've got the first step unit that will go on the board when you actually bring it on. It takes a step loss, you then have this side, so you completely replace the counter. It takes another step loss, you actually invert the counter to its blank side, so the weakened step. So effectively it's got 3 steps. So that step has no combat strength whatsoever, other than the movement value that's on the reverse side. So this division, one of the SS, has actually got its initial step, first step loss, second step loss, third step loss, fourth step loss, and then the reverse of that. So it's got effectively 6 steps, because that's a big, powerful division. And it's the same with these ones. That is one division and all its steps. That's another division and all its steps. So that's why there is so many counters, and that explains the blanks on here. Because then once I'd set up all this, as I knew I was going to be playing the basic game, I moved them to this chart here. Now, here, this area here is the initial setup units. These here are the reinforcement, and these are just the divisions. Each one of these counters has a display here, so that's why there's all these blanks on this side, because that's the initial steps that are actually on the board, or up here awaiting to be set up on the board. So this is just the actual step, effectively a step reduction chart, if you like. So after doing that with the Germans, I did the same with the Allies. So you've got the Allied initial units, the ones that are into the actual basic game moved to here, These here are the units that they can start the game with. These are reinforcements, and the area below is effectively its step production chart from there. So let's have a deeper look at the map. First of all, let's just zoom out a little bit. When I say zoom, that's me walking effectively backwards. And actually move around to this side on the map. It's a long map. It's a long way to go for the Allies to get right to the top. And it's a very thin map as well, so the front is going to be quite narrow. So it's a long way to go on a congested front line. Okay, so we look into the detail. Yeah, you can see the map's worn in a few areas by the prior ownership, but generally speaking, it still looks damn good. So all the way up to the rule book. Damn, I should have taken that off for the long shot, shouldn't I? Let's go back on that. So there we go, all the way to the top this time. Yes. So there's a lot of ground to be covered in that. But let's have a look at some of the little details on the map. You know, the terrain and such forth. So we have on there the actual different colours. This really pale colour here, this is effectively your plains, open ground, or clear, as we like to say in wargame terms. I'm using these, as I mentioned in the prior episode, to show the victory hexes, which we'll come to in a minute. This colour, slightly darker brown, is rough terrain. Okay, and then this here, the even darker colour, is what they call alpini. That's the most rugged terrain. Now, these black lines here represent mountains. So you've got mountains in the rough, but you've also got mountains in this alpini, which is the lot more severe terrain. And you've got quite a bit of it floating around. There's also major roads, minor roads, and rivers. So this is a river hex. This here is what's called a headwater hex and has effectively no effect on movement at all, whereas a river certainly does. Minor towns, and we've got major towns. There's Naples. There's Naples. Major cities on the map. And the last terrain is swamp here, which has the same effect as these alpini hexes. Now, one complaint that's been quite prevalent is this use of the rivers in the middle of hexes rather than hex sides. It's something I saw in Avalon Hill's War and Peace. I don't think it's particularly successful implementation of a river. Why not just follow the hex side? Then you can definitely know which side is which. But it's in these rules, so we need to follow and obey them. Yeah, general effect of a river is if you're on, let's put a German unit there, an Allied unit there, and this Allied unit is attacking the German will have its defence doubled because it's defending. I know even this the unit's on the river. This unit is actually as classed as being behind the river and being defended, getting the defence bonus. If this unit attacks this one, then no, this does not get a defence bonus. Also, when it comes to moving on a river, And so I'm not going to do a deep dive in the rules, but obviously if you've got a road crossing a river, that's a bridge, so you can just carry on moving. Roads negate, and also the minor roads negate the terrain in the hex for movement purposes. But if you come up to a river here, you must stop. Okay, if you then want to cross it, next turn, you can either move off in that direction or, well, in any direction you want to. And I did say you must stop. That's not quite true. Let's get one of the dreaded tweezers. So if I'm moving along and come to here, I can keep moving along effectively the riverbank, but I can't cross over the river at any point in that turn unless I sort of reach a road, and then I can continue. So I could move along, boo-boo-doo-boo-doo, get to here, then carry on across, but I definitely can't come into here and then cross there until the following turn. And remembering these little nuggins of rivers here, the headwaters, do not count as a river effect. The other terrain effect, these Alpinis then, they use up a whole unit's movement if you're crossing the actual Alpini. So I've got to take because the subtle shades, you know, it's not that easy to see, especially from a little distance with weakening eyesight. But a unit moving from there across that Alpini hex, I would use all its movement value. Okay, you can't move up to the hex and then say, right, I've got 5 movement points left and move across. No, you've got to start there. The following turn, you move across, if that is what you're wanting to do. The mountains themselves have no effect on movement. It's the Alpina, and that's where one of the little odd nubbins comes in, is that you're not paying the terrain cost of the hex you're entering, you're paying the hex cost of the hex side you are crossing. So again, using the Canadian unit, if I'm moving from this hex to this hex, I'm paying the terrain cost of that hex side that I'm crossing there. So, which is unusual. I have not seen another game that actually mentions that you're not paying for the terrain, that hex that you're entering, you're paying for the hex side you're crossing. And you also, if a hex has got multiple terrains in it, I'm trying to find a hex which does, you pay the lowest cost. So if I was moving from here to here, crossing this hex side, I'm playing the clear rather than the rough terrain hex side there. Now, it does sort of raise a question about something like this hex side. Well, I suppose moving from there to there, I'm moving into crossing the rough. But if I move from there to there, well, there's only a clear little bit there. So I think the terrain needs to be closely investigated as you play the game. When it comes to terrain for defensive, mountains double the defense. So if we have an example as such, where this Allied unit foolishly wants to attack this German unit sitting on a mountain across the river, it will actually be tripled. And if in that kind of situation, and the attack, any losses taken by the attacker are actually doubled, any step losses. So yeah, that's a tricky sort of place to attack from. So yeah, that's the terrain. Also on the map are these red areas. These are the invasion or potential invasion beaches that the Allies can come from, and each one of them has some information in red. You've got what's an IL number, which I think stands for initial lift, which is the initial invasion if you invade on that beach. Another one on there is capacity. That's how many Allied stacking steps can be supplied from that beach. And then you've got the build-up, which is how much reinforcements can be brought in and or evacuated from. So if it's got a built-up of six steps could be brought in and 6 steps could be removed out on the same turn. Also, various ports have the same situation. They don't have initial lift value, but they do have a capacity and they do have a build-up. And on the initial invasion, so on the first turn, the Allies must do an invasion, and there's one of 6 they can invade from, or invade to, I suppose, and it's all on this southern map area here. So it does not include this beach in the initial invasion, but there are 6 others, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the west coast and 2 on the east coast. So this is what I'm postulating to play, is which one will I invade? Well, I'm not very good at second guessing myself, so I'm going to actually, as there's 6, I'm going to use a dice to determine which beach the actual Allies land. There's also 2 other areas where the Allies can come in, and that's from, don't worry about my pronouncing, Messina and Taranto. Those, they do not have to invade, they're already classed as invaded, that's what the arrows do. But any troops brought in here will come on either from this side of the board or this side of the board for the Allies. So what do the Allies need to do to actually win? Well, that's, I did mention, is these little crosses on the board to remind me where the actual hexes are. There is a total of 9 of these little hexes. By the end of the game, the Allies have got to have taken 5 of them to win. Then there's another victory condition, is if the Allies don't manage that, but the Germans don't have a full front line, in other words, hexes covering across the board with either units or their zones of control all the way through, so that the Allies can actually have, there's a gap and they can trace all the way, gap right the way to the edge of the northern map board there, then the Germans haven't maintained a front line and the Allies also can win that way. That's the victory conditions. We have on the map at the present moment the Germans set up according to the setup chart, apart from 1 unit, which is the one I'm using for the examples, 16th Panzer. It has free setup. So where do I set it up on the map? Because I don't know where the Allies are going to invade, because I'm going to use that as a random determiner. Because if I knew where the Allies are going to invade, well, I'd place this division to counter that, wouldn't I? So I don't know where to place that unit, and that's where I come to the little, oh please, if you could hit a like on the, whoops, knocked the camera, that was brilliant, wasn't it? If you could hit a like on the, I say hit, I always use the word hit or smash. If you can just press the like button, that'd be much appreciated, because it helps the channel and it spreads the video around the algorithm. So if you could like, that'd be appreciated. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe if you can, if you're interested. Then you'll get, and then hit that little notification bell as well. Because what I want to do with this is have your involvement in comments and such forth. So the game is ready to go. I'm not going to start playing it until the next video. I've gone through the terrain and the setup, so you can see the Germans are, we've got a few divisions floating around. Okay, but we don't know where the Allies are coming from. We know that there will be units able to come in here and here, but where the actual invasion is, don't know. It'll be determined by a die roll. So, in your comments, I'd like you to tell me where would be the best place to place this unit. Do the Germans do a heavy defence of the southern area? Apparently Hitler was convinced that the southern Italy was lost, and he didn't defend this area too thoroughly. He pulled back quickly. But according to the rules, if there's zones of control along this line here, the Allies can't enter. But this is quite a long front to defend. I think it's, I can't remember the exact hex coordinates, but it's about up to here that the Allies can come in. And then as the game progresses, it gets further along to the point that they can enter anywhere along there. with any units that they bring in at these points. These also got build up. It says initial lift. I don't know why it would have the word initial lift unless it represents on the first turn. That's only the amount of units that can be brought in in that area. But these have a turn delay. So if I place these on turn 1 to come in here, they actually arrive on turn 2 on the actual board itself. So the Germans could rush units down here and stop what's going on. But if they do so, obviously they've got invasions behind them, they've got to take care of that as well, because the last thing you want to do is have because units can move very swiftly on this, the Allies taking out stuff behind them and cutting off the supply of the German units in this area. Supply for the Germans comes from the northern map edge. Supply from the Allies is dependent on that capacity on the beachheads. I have therefore postulated 4 initial starting positions for the 16th Panzer, because we don't know where the Allies are going to invade. And I've marked these with these cubes as a yellow, a white, a green, a blue and a pink. Pink one is if we decide, as the Germans, to heavily defend the southern part of Italy. This is sort of able to move quite quickly to any of the invasion fronts, and these two, well, the white one here is to defend against any invasion from these 2 beaches, and this one obviously for these 2 beaches. So in the comments section I'll place the 16th Division in the one that gets the most replies, and then I'll roll the dice and we will begin for the dice for the invasion, and then we'll begin the game. So yes, that's it. Let me know in your comments what you think, and where you want me to place the 16th Division, and we'll take it from there. So until next time, thank you for watching. Bye Internet.